listening to Let's Talk About Ethics with me, Evie Wenting. And today I would like to introduce Sharon Savert. Sharon is the founder and CEO of Core Coaching and Consulting LLC, where she works as the intersection of leadership, system thinking, and organizational health. A former CEO in healthcare and a business consulting, Sharon brings decades of hands on experience guiding leaders and companies through complex change with clarity, compassion, and strategic acumen.
Here that I want to zone in on, I want to amplify, and that is the issue of safety. Do people feel safe enough? So the way we do our design and the way you guys are doing your work is how do we make people feel safe? And they don't. Most people do not feel safe. They don't feel safe that they're going to be able to keep their job. They don't feel safe that someone's not going to punish them. They don't feel safe that the boss has their back. They don't feel safe that they can be their real selves or give their real gifts. So these are issues that we address at every stage. We want to increase the sense of safety in the culture.
I was recently just speaking with someone who wrote a book and he had noted the psychological safety. So he was 22 years old in the finance industry. There were things happening he didn't understand. He thought it was part of the culture, right?
Uh-huh.
And there was no psychological safety to ask questions. In our conversation, I had asked him, what would you tell your 22-year-old self today?
Oh God, that's a great
From
one.
yeah, from knowing that and he spoke about asking questions. What would you tell your 22-year-old self today entering the workforce? What would be the one thing that you think it's the most important that they know?
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you respond?
So he did speak about ask questions, be in a way brave to ask your immediate supervisor and a leader. Look at it from a big picture perspective and just ask for feedback on what is it actually meant by the things that I heard? Did I hear it the right way? Really, sometimes it had to do with the culture and with it's been always done this way and welcoming an opportunity for maybe new pair of eyes seeing it in a different way. And so that's what I think. It's important to arm our young people with enough knowledge that they feel good about asking questions.
One of the reasons I call our system in the Six Powers Integrated Performance System is because we want to work simultaneously with three levels: the individual workers, the leaders, and the organizational system. We want to move them through the process I described at the same time. So that will increase the safety for the workers. That helps the leaders a lot, not have to be dragging everything or pushing everything. And of course, the organizational system becomes more healthy. So we want to integrate all these people at these different levels as we go through the six powers that are integrated and help them build.
That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Yes, I
Thank
definitely.
you. I've worked a long time on this.
I think it's important. But then I also know the reality in most organizations, what the compliance or just not even, don't say compliance, just training look
Mhm.
like. And it generally does not look like that, right?
Right, right.
When you are onboarded, you are talked to about benefits. You're talked about IT security and maybe building security, right? When there was COVID, you were talked to about just
Mm.
health, safety, and COVID, harassment prevention, and probably code of conduct training summarizes what employees get at the beginning of their employment
Mhm.
and what they get on annual basis.
So
Very little time is spent on what we're talking about here.
So let's talk about how do you think, as I've explained the system, how do you think it could support compliance people and ethics people? How can it support organizations to do this without so much mishigas? Why is this should not be this hard, is what I'm trying to say. And in truth, our system is really an easy one to connect the dots and follow. So what do your colleagues in this compliance and ethics space need from us, need from people like us?
I think, and that's why I ask, like, how do you begin? I think initially it is really important that the C-suite and the board are very, very clear on what the values are, what the mission is, what your core is,
You
there
got it.
that's the responsibility of them to really understand it, and that everything that happens with the organization is really tied to that. And I think there is still a disconnect, and it's even having conversations with my colleagues where, you know, there may be pretty strong values, there may be a compliance program, and then there's all this activity that happens. And a lot of times it is not tied directly to the values. Recently, and before we started recording, I was telling you about this great women in compliance retreat that I was in. And one of my female compliance colleagues was talking about her company and how their leaders were really great at tying everything to the values.
Brilliant.
Every new
Brilliant. Yeah.
initiative, everything was, but that was the first time I've heard someone say that. So it was,
God bless her and God bless them. These are the models for us to say yes and yes. This is the way it's done. Yes.
or,
I just
or somebody also, which I think this gets overlooked, but it was good. So we were talking about the topic of how companies can nominate compliance heroes for
nice.
say, and it's something that we've done in the past in some of the organizations that I supported. It was a not self, but coworkers nominating their coworkers for something from the values of company values, or living with ethics, compliance, and integrity. And if you've done something in that, you had a chance someone to write about you and present a photo, and then it came with some perks as it may. And we did it in the spirit of Compliance Month. The one point that stuck with me that my female colleague had said was they always make sure that that name wouldn't show up in any of the hotline systems or any reporting systems, to make sure that somebody may say you're good here, but you did something over here. That when we say we honor you with this compliance hero honoration, that we know you are good across the board. And
Ah,
that's by checking the dots and living with the values. I think it was great. So the organization where I worked, it was smaller, and I was in charge of the hotline process. So I would know if that happened, and it didn't, thank goodness. So I didn't really have to feel like I had to like check the system, because I understood and I knew everything about the system. But I was happy to hear her say that, saying, look, you have to check. So that's again bringing it to the values of
mhm.
integrity. We don't just say this and give these kudos to anyone. You really truly have to deserve it. And I think that happens a lot, that there is an idea and you run with it without crossing the dots and checking back. So I think it's a great opportunities for organizations. Even this conversation here is, take a pause when, even if it's a immensely great idea, make
Yeah,
sure that you look at it from all the different perspectives, and that it ties to your core mission and the values,
right.
because that's how you reinforce it.
One of the things that we make a distinction on in my system is that we talk about core principles and then we talk about values as being separate from that. And it's something that my European colleagues actually leaned on me about, and I know they're right about this. So the core principles are the absolutely non-negotiable pieces. So I may have a value of beauty. I'd love the workplace to be clean and neat and have nice art on the walls, but that's not a core principle. So each one of the powers has values, but the core is what holds the bedrock. It's the internal stability. This is not negotiable. And when companies let that slide is when they come into these compliance and ethics problems. So they maybe don't have to have as much value on the trains running on time or any things like that, but the bedrock piece, the principles, is I think where we and the compliance and ethics communities are really singing the same song. Does that sound at all right to you?
Yeah, makes sense, right? Having core principles that are non-negotiable. But as you were saying this, in my mind, I was trying to think of the organizations that I've been
Yeah.
close with, whether they have it or not. I've seen a mission statement, right? And I've
Yeah,
seen
they ain't it.
values.
Yeah.
I don't know that they dig as deep into the core non-negotiable principles and everyone understands. In your experience, is this what you come in and you have to, in the way, create those core principles because companies aren't sure? Because I think that's the landscape what I'm seeing, but I don't know if you
Yeah, I think you may have hit on something really important. So that clarification, that bedrock piece of what makes us who we are, our purpose and our principles, is often very unclear in organizations. I'll give you an example. I was once working with a law firm, and you know this, everyone who's listening knows this. People usually call you in when they're in trouble. And so we actually got through with their board, all the partners in the law firm. We really got their SWOT together, and we got their identification of the core together. And they had their principles. And then they had to face the fact that they were going to have to let people go. So I was in this meeting, and they're all running around like crazy. They were running a little scared. And they were talking about how they were going to let all these people go. And I'm watching this and I'm going, and I stand up and I go, hold the train here. Everyone stop. I want you to look back at what we did last week over here on this board. And you said your principles were this: how to care for your people, in the professional environment. I can't recall exactly what they were, but they weren't letting people go without appropriate and respectful treatment. And they listened to me. Even the HR person was going, we really can't give them severance. I'm going, stop. Everybody stop. Your law firm. These people that you're letting go of know how to sue the hell out of you. Let's not go there. And so what happened was that the partners sat down with every person that they identified as needing let go. They sat down with them in person. They gave them a decent severance package. They explained what was happening. They explained the references they were going to do and everything that they were going to do for them. And it was an incredible success. If a layoff can ever be a success, this was a success because everyone left saying, I understand, I felt treated well, and thank you. This was a surprisingly good experience.
And I
Okay.
think that's a great example of, and this is what my mantra is, put people before the numbers, right?
Yeah, I
When
agree.
you start thinking of everyone at a human level, even in compliance, not just the law you have to follow, but how it affects people or this gap between legal and ethical and how what you
Yes.
do if you look at between legal and ethical, if you look at human first, look at a policy between legal and ethical, for example, and I may get crucified for this one, but I've seen
Oh,
policies.
oh,
Let's look at this, talking about people. I've seen policies for travel and entertainment for companies where it gets separated by the level of who you are in the company versus maybe everyone being treated the same, and it's the distance that is makes the change. And obviously now executives who travel a lot have a lot of miles. You can always do upgrades, right? But it shouldn't be as a matter of policy that if you are a VP and above, you get a first class to a trip to Tokyo. But if you're not, you're going to sit and coach. I
yeah.
think that says a lot about the organization is how you treat people at policy level. So if we want to truly make sure that the tuning happens, it
Yes.
also has to happen across the policies and how that's reflected, right?
Right.
Like,
You can't have one part of the orchestra playing in the key of C and the other in the key of A, right? It does not work. Right. And that's what
that
you're
happens.
talking about. And the example that I gave earlier in terms of the reduction in fraud addressed just this issue, the differentials in cost and how people were very annoyed by that. The sense of fairness.
Fair, yeah, human, fairness, and authentic are those key words that you hear that need to be at a core of every organization, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a great place to start and then fine tuning it from there.
Yeah.
So, what are the other needs that you see? You have this example of this women in compliance event that you just went to.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of examples really need to be touted because they show A, it can be done,
Mhm.
B, it's not such a heavy lift. And as a matter of fact, long term, it's a lighter lift if you do this because the system is all rising together in this integrated way that I talk about.
I think in that specific case, so I will not give the name, but it's a European-based company and it's privately owned. So when you have
Mm.
a family at the core who is really truly living and writing, and I think that's maybe the key, that may be the key to this is they wrote their values themselves. Maybe I'm sure with the help of consultants and making that in action, but it was something that they themselves lived with, so it was easier to sell. Maybe in the many organizations as we know them, and it's not communicated well at the beginning of employment, which we touched on earlier on, you have these leaders coming in and their values, they were told this is what it is,
Yeah, really.
but they haven't made it their own. And I think to me, that's the difference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah, is there a congruence? Is there a resonance between the people and the leaders, the workers and the leaders, the board members? Is there a congruence? Is there a resonance in that? Because if there is, things are so much easier.
easier, yes. But
It's
it's like I will
easier.
back again to how do you enter the organization? So if we were to make a hard line now and you have your chance to speak to an organization and say, okay, we're going to set up the core principles, we're going to set up the values, or you already have them, but maybe improve them, right? Because everybody has some. And we're going to make sure that everyone from the beginning engagement of the organization understands it. There is no other way than up, living and breathing and engaging with those values at heart because that's what you know when you first come in. But when that doesn't happen and when it happens maybe at some point in the employment, how long is it going to be? I'm not sure. I think that's where the grace area comes and that's where the trouble comes in because you just
Mm,
don't tell your people. And like you said, you work across all level of the organizations. If you don't tell your people at the beginning what that is, how are they going to know? They're bringing probably values from the company that they had left. And you also said, if you're very strong in communicating your values at the beginning, you may deter the people who aren't really
wow.
going to go along with what you're doing right at the beginning. So you're saving yourself a lot of headaches. So I think
Right.
it just,
There's something about hire slow, fire fast
yeah.
is one of the things that I've heard. And that tuning through the whole interview process, making sure that the people who are there are tuned correctly to you, back to them, that they are congruent. And you can see that in the interview process. Are they gonna be a cultural fit? Are they going to add to us, or are they gonna be a rotten apple in this barrel?
So let's add another wrinkle to that.
Okay.
AI. Uh,
Okay.
and with AI, if our people aren't trained properly,
Mm.
they may be missing a lot of great candidates that would be perfect for our organizational fit to go along with our core values, but we may
Mm.
never know them. And I think that's a big worry too, where many people rely on AI in decision-making process,
For
and they
hiring, you mean, for the hiring,
I mean, for
recruiting?
hiring, this is what we're talking about here, but for anything, right? You rely on AI to take the initiative of making a decision. And I think people in hiring will soon lose an opportunity to meet with really good people because somehow you will not get the chance. And it's really hard without human input. And I was just going to look up something that I posted today
Oh,
that
okay.
I found on Substack that was fascinating, and it was IB training manual. And as I'm looking, give me a minute. Okay, let's see if I can go quickly here.
I think we are, while you look that up, I think we are very much in the thick of how do we move out of the horse and buggies pre-AI stages to the fast car AI stages that we have. We actually use this to augment our coaching and consulting work. So we have our own tools to help people and systems reflect on themselves. So we have embraced it, but it's human first,
Mhm.
then AI, then human again, and then
Okay,
we are always looping back to the six powers humanity of our system. Yes, go ahead.
so
You got
in the BM training, it was a computer can never be held accountable.
ah,
Therefore, a computer must never make a management decision.
wow. Yes, of course.
And that was in 70s, 80s when they said this.
Oh my God.
And I had to post it today because I saw it somewhere and I'm like, this is brilliant and people must remember that. And if we continue to remember that and continue to learn about AI and all the different things and training of people of how to interpret, how to question, how to use your brain, right? That's what we tell our children.
And your
Question.
heart, and use your heart. Yes, use your
Yeah.
brain, heart, and soul. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And keep looping it back to the center of every decision that you make, I think will be good. But we have to continue driving that and say you can't just rely on a tool to do everything
Oh,
for
of
you.
course. Yeah. So what are your thoughts in terms of, I mean, I want to work with the people in the compliance and ethics communities. How would you suggest we do that? How do we suggest our people meeting your people? What are your thoughts?
I think it's by having conversations like these,
Like this?
learning
Yeah.
more about the how your organization can help to drive the ethics and compliance and integrity first message and how to really make that part of the values and the core of the organization. I think that's a great start.
Oh,
Um,
good. Okay,
yeah.
good. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. I also want to say something about how personal this is for me. So the when I first started this long journey to developing this whole system, and it's been over decades that I've been working on starting with the Balancing Act and then working to make it more and more relevant to leaders and organizations to the work I do today. But I started as a sort of a punk CEO myself, and I ran a family planning center, then I ran a group health plan that created was very successful, created industry records for earliest break even. And we had a very strong, loyal, ethical core. We knew what we were doing. We were like the Blues Brothers. We were on a mission from God. We were just ready to go. And boy, that really did turn into numbers and performance and everything. But we discovered this quite by accident. So while I was in that system, I had the situation where my brother was killed in a workplace accident. My brother John was worked in a water treatment plant,
Oh,
and he and that company was out of compliance in its safety standards. And the workers complained and they complained, and then there was this
it
death in the
takes.
workplace.
Right.
And so it feels to me in talking with your community that I am coming back to the reason
Mhm.
I do this work. I want to stop suffering in the workplace. I want to have people achieve their capacities. And the compliance community and ethics community is, I think, on the forefront of helping make that happen, which is why it's so personal for me to have these conversations. I want to support you guys any way I can.
And we're definitely aligned in that because that's from a different perspective, my vision and the mission, even for my company, and why I call it ethical edge. Edge is the people in the compliance, right?
Uh-huh.
You
Yes.
want to make sure you do the right thing by people. And I'm so sorry that your family had to go through that. I can't only imagine the
And
managers.
how many hundreds and thousands and of times around the world is this
It's
still happening?
happening. And from how I see it, where it is, it's probably the managers who were on site were overworked. They had pressures from the top, pressures from the employees in the bottom, and they were not taught how to handle these kind of everyday decisions. So that's exactly why I developed my integrity playbook ethical leadership training, because that will help them understand how important it is to have open door policy, right? We talk about escalation and how to handle issues, because when they first hear issues, it may, in your the case that's close to you, it may have been some kind of a faulty valve, right? But not addressing that early, it created something much bigger, which happens all the time. So if we can have our managers to understand that if they take ownership of the little issues in their everyday spaces, they probably are preventing a lot of disasters from happening by addressing it early.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. And how do we make it easy for them to do
Right.
that? How do we make that the norm for
Right.
them to do that? Because this is not one workplace death. This is a whole family that was disrupted. This is and every time that happens, it's that multiple.
And
It's
it's your
that multiple.
family, but it's the work family too, right? They
Oh,
have to,
yes.
like, how would you want to do the job next if you knew that the person before you was not safe enough to do it, right?
Exactly.
Like, there is careless mistakes, but there is also systemic issues, and more conversations like this we have with our managers, with the employees at the base, that to understand that there is a program in place, there is communication in place to help to create a better job environments for them, the better it is. So thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it. I look forward to another conversation where we can talk about different issues and how to apply your core values and principles across the organization. So thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed having you here.
Excellent. And me too. So let's continue the conversation because we are on we're on the right track and we can help each other so much. And the people out there, there's so many people out there who need us, the managers, the workers, the board members who go, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this better. We can help them together, particularly.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.